Chapter 1576 Volt Shadow Battle. The next day, Zhang Yi arrived at the Volt Shadow Troops Training Academy for the first time. In order to welcome his arrival, the investigative members of Tengu Squad led by Li Changqing and Ma Wenjing, who was leading all the 30 trainees, were waiting in full gear on the academy's training grounds. In the morning, a silver-gray snow chariot drove to the academy. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin walked down from the top of the vehicle. When the crowd saw Zhang Yi, an undisguised excitement immediately appeared among their expressions. There were clearly longing colors swirling within their eyes as they looked at Zhang Yi. Even those who had known Zhang Yi in the past, under Ma Wenjing's education during this time, their feelings towards Zhang Yi had changed significantly in their hearts. Those gazes clearly wrote the Western word respect him like a god. The results of such training made Zhang Yi very satisfied. What he wanted had to be a mutant unit that was completely loyal to him. And at critical moments, able to die for him without hesitation. Ma Wenjing placed his right fist on his chest and shouted, "For the supreme glory." The trainees behind him, including Li Changqing, made a neat move, and the shout resounded through the sky. For the supreme glory. Such a scene made Zhang Yi couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, not knowing what, feeling inexplicably familiar. Fortunately, Yang Xinxin had already greeted him before he came. Zhang Yi raised his right hand. "You guys have worked hard." Li Changqing took a few steps forward and stood across with his hands behind his back. "Your Supreme Excellency." Volt Shadow Troop 101 Training Class. 30 trainees are assembled. Please instruct. Zhang Yi's gaze swept across the scene. Many of the people inside he recognized, and of course, there were also some raw faces. "Let me see the results of your training." Zhang Yi didn't bother to make an official statement and spoke so simply. "Yes." Li Changqing turned back and immediately gave them an order. The next step was the display of the training results. A month's time, completely overspecified militarized training. The first thing to be demonstrated was the basic combat quality. Crossing obstacles, mixed martial arts. Zhang Yi took out a sofa seat from dimensional space and placed it on the ground, and Yang Xinxin leisurely sat down, quietly enjoying their performance. Li Changqing is worthy of being a top soldier. These Tianhai City soldiers fell into his hands, just 1 month. Has been trained in style. Zhang Yi was trained by Lian Yu for 3 years, and is also considered an expert in this area. You can see that these mutants have made significant progress, and already have the initial qualities of a soldier. However, this point is not the most important. Mutant, the most critical is the use of supernatural energy. The second stage of the performance was the supernatural ability. Zhang Yi called Li Changqing over and said to him, "This dry performance is not interesting. The first stage is to have them fight 2 by 2. With him here, no one would die. Even serious injuries could be healed quickly. Only actual combat was the best way to improve a mutant's strength." Li Changqing heard this and nodded without hesitation, then turned around and began to assign them sparring partners. "You. 1 group for sparring, go all out and aim to kill each other. You two in a group, go over there. You, as support ability mutants, pair up with combat attribute mutants for a 2v2. Medical type mutants are ready to heal at all times." Li Changqing took less than a minute to arrange everything. The training ground was large enough, and soon they were grouped together to start engaging. Zhang Yi pulled out small snacks and sat on the side with Yang Xinxin, slowly watching. His gaze, still, rested more on a few familiar faces. Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, and Lu Dehai. These 3 people were the veteran powerhouses of Tianhai City, and before entering the Volt Shadow Troop, their supernatural ability index was only 5000 to 6000 points. Because Zhang Yi did not give them the conditions to improve their strength, and there was also a deliberate suppression of them. Now that they had been given sufficient exercise resources and professional instructors to guide them, their strength had risen to the next level. Xiao Honglian's opponent was a mutant who could control earth and stone. When he was fighting, he first controlled the earth to tremble, causing Xiao Holian's form to become unstable. Rumble. The earth cracked and huge gaps appeared under Xiao Holian's feet. Unless one possessed the ability to fly, fighting on the ground would easily be affected. As expected, although Xiao Holian's feet were firmly standing on the ground, her figure was unable to remain stable due to the overall movement of the ground. The opposite mutant decisively drew his gun and fired at Xiao Holian. The moment Xiao Holian drew her gun, she decisively rolled her body to the side several times. Her right hand pressed on the ground, a reddish-colored mottled pattern appeared on her arm like magma, and the blazing power surged above the earth, causing all the surrounding ice and snow to rapidly melt. Boom! A stream of magma violently erupted from under the opposite mutant's feet, rushing headlong into his lower body. The mutant's face went white with fear and he subconsciously reached out to protect his brother, but the rolling magma still flooded the lower half of his body. Ah! He let out a pig-killing scream as his body burned with a blazing fire. His burns were severe. Quickly, salvage the fire. The people from the medical unit next to him immediately followed, only they didn't think that in this kind of weather, they would need to find a way to extinguish the fire. Still Xiao Holian, seeing that her opponent had lost the ability to resist, she stretched her palm towards him, and the flames on the other party's body were immediately attracted over, falling into the center of Xiao Holian's palm. Xiao Holian clenched her fists and looked towards Zhang Yi in the distance with a somewhat proud smile. Zhang Yi nodded. Very good. This woman's talent is really something. Xiao Holian's talent for one wasn't bad, at the very least, it was only higher than Uncle Yu. It wasn't that her supernatural abilities were that strong, but this woman was exceptionally intelligent. So she would be better than the average person at drilling and using her abilities to the maximum. Yang Xinxin said, cultivate her properly, and she will be another captain-level mutant in the future. This woman is cost-effective. Yang Xinxin liked to quantify things, even including people. Mutants of the Delta level were almost always able to reach the captain level in theory. It was just that depending on the level of talent, the time spent and the resources consumed were completely different. To put it simply, it was Xiao Holian who was more valuable to cultivate. Zhang Yi nodded, indeed. On the other hand, Lu Dehai's combat performance was also extremely outstanding, and he was the one who had been focused on by Zhang Yi. With the ability of fish manification, even on land, he would possess strong and incomparable physical abilities. He would be even stronger if he entered the deep sea. As for Xing Tian, his single combat ability was average compared to his group support ability, but it was better than his comprehensive ability. Chapter 1577 Test of Loyalty. Xing Tian's opponent was a man with long, disheveled hair, a reinforcement mutant with ordinary supernatural literacy. Zhang Yi could tell at a glance that he could enhance his speed, strength, and defense through his abilities. This kind of attribute was among the most common among the reinforcement lineage. The man's fighting style was also based on steadiness, and in the middle of the battle against Xing Tian seemed to be fighting a lot more ferociously than usual in order to maintain his majesty as the leader of the Qingpu base, as well as to show his strength in front of Zhang Yi. Carrying two huge chopping board axes, he was like a god descending from the heavens, wielding the board axes in a tiger-like manner, making his offense full of intimidation when Xing Tian's legion was only spiked with one person. However, Zhang Yi's gaze did not linger on him too long. Instead, he stared at Xing Tian's opponent, his gaze gradually revealing a curious and playful color. He beckoned towards Bai Li Changqing next to him. Bai Li Changqing immediately walked over, Captain. Only the members of the Tengu squad would address Zhang Yi like this nowadays. Zhang Yi looked at Xing Tian's opponent and asked, what's that guy's name? What's the origin? Bai Li Changqing glanced at the man and hurriedly said, his name is Ruan Ping, from Qingpu base. I mean, does he have any personal information? Bai Li Changqing scratched his head, no. After the end of the world, Most people's profiles were blank, and with soldiers everywhere, there was no way for anyone to systematically collect all of a person's information. Interesting. Zhang Yi hooked up the corner of his mouth. Bai Li Changqing looked at Ruan Ping with some curiosity, not quite understanding. Captain, forgive my poor eyesight. I didn't see anything special in him. Mutants like Ruan Ping were a dime a dozen amongst the Yan Yunwei of Blizzard City. He might not even be able to reach the level of an investigative team member. The reason why he was able to be selected as one of the first batch of Volt Shadow team members was simply because Tianhai City had too few talents right now. Zhang Yi did not speak, but continued to look at Ruan Ping. Bai Li Changqing was right, Ruan Ping was too mediocre. There was hardly anything that stood out, but there wasn't anything too bad about him either. Such a person, thrown into the pile of mutants, was a solid stray fish that no one would pay attention to. However, because of this, it is the most interesting. It's like taking an exam. Whether it's 100 points or a 0, it's the most likely to get the teacher's attention. Off in the middle of the group of passing score up and down the students, the teacher will not pay much attention. However, have you ever seen a student who scored 60 on all exams? Zhang Yi was a master of disguise. He was more steady than anyone else and was better at hiding his strength. So after seeing Ruan Ping's playing style, he smelled a familiar flavor. This fellow, too, was hiding his true strength. Xinxin, the test we talked about before can be conducted now. Zhang Yi turned his head sideways and said to Yang Xinxin. Yang Xinxin understood and nodded calmly. Soon enough, the mutant versus mutant battle over there ended. Ruan Ping ended up losing to Xing Tian, who was holding a large axe, smiling smugly, and not forgetting to cast a look at Zhang Yi to take credit. Zhang Yi's gaze contained a smile, and after glancing at Ruan Ping, who was only bruised, he stood up and said to them, "Very good, I have seen the results of your training. It's very good, it's even better than what I imagined. However, compared to the members of the investigation forces of the various regions, you still have a considerable gap. Not to mention comparing it to the mutants at the source level. So next, you guys still need to work harder. I need the best fighters that can become sharp blades in my hands." The words contained both encouragement and made them realize how far their strength was from the elites of the top forces in the world. When the crowd heard this, they were happy, but they didn't dare to slack off the slightest bit inwardly. "Now, let's enter the third session," Zhang Yi said indifferently. Bai Li Changqing looked at Zhang Yi with some surprise. They hadn't arranged for the so-called third session. However, since it was an inspection, it was normal to add some items temporarily. Zhang Yi said, "The name of the third session is called Ask the Heart." He smiled as he scanned all the mutants present. "My men must have absolute loyalty to me. Any disloyalty is absolutely not allowed. Of course, no one is perfect. The purpose of you all coming here might just be to become stronger or to get my shelter. Now I am not overly harsh on you all." He slowly raised a finger, "But right now, I require you all to possess the bare minimum. You can't harbor ill intentions towards me, or anyone in Tianhai City for that matter." As soon as these words were spoken, the faces of the mutants on the scene all appeared to change to a greater or lesser extent. Some of them were full of candor, but more of them had a hard look on their faces. To put it bluntly, they had just come over to make a living, and they could not speak of absolute loyalty to Zhang Yi at the moment. Even if Ma Wenjing's ideological education class had produced some impact, it was impossible to complete the brainwashing immediately. It was good that Zhang Yi had one last sentence that reassured them a lot. Who would dare to hit a black chariot level epsilon? Wasn't that purely looking for death? Zhang Yi's gaze swiftly skimmed over everyone's faces as he said these words with a smirk. When he saw Ruan Ping, there was also a trace of consternation on this fellow's face, but he quickly regained his composure. It looked incomparably normal, but it was because it was so normal that it rather aggravated Zhang Yi's suspicion. Normal people, how could any of them be flawless? Being too perfect was instead a flaw. Of course, Zhang Yi could not be completely sure that he was the one with the problem. However, once the seed of suspicion was planted, it would inevitably take root and sprout. So, it was better to verify it clearly at once. He looked at Yang Xinxin beside him, who showed her abilities at the right time. She wore a set of black special load dress, stepping on small brown leather shoes made of cold-proof material to see, and stood expressionlessly on the snowy ground. A divine light poured down from the top of her head, and an angel silhouette that was gorgeous with a few eerie moments slowly emerged behind her. A huge six-winged angel, with paired feathers in the colors of red, black, and blue. He was holding a longbow, and the expression on his face seemed to be smiling and crying, as if he was pitying the world. Zhang Yi said, "Next, you will come up one by one and undergo the test of Ask the Heart. Her ability is simple, those who are hit by her arrows will tell the truth. If you have a clear conscience, walk up." This time, Zhang Yi finally caught a flash of change on Wuluan Ping's face. Zhang Yi hooked the corners of his mouth and didn't bother wasting time, reaching out to head through the crowd and pointing at Wuluan Ping. "Just you first." Chapter 1578, The Infiltrator. Zhang Yi smiled as he looked at Wuluan Ping, and everyone's gazes fell on him. Everyone did not have any special reactions, thinking that this was just a simple loyalty test. Wuluan Ping opened his mouth in some surprise, and after meeting Zhang Yi's slightly meaningful gaze, he smiled helplessly. Then, in the next instant, with everyone caught off guard, a dazzling light appeared between Wuluan Ping and Zhang Yi, and a raging and terrifying power instantly erupted. The strength of that power gave the impression that it could simply destroy the heavens and the earth. The few people who were closest to Wuluan Ping stiffened. They had no doubt that if that power poured out a single ounce of it on their bodies, it could instantly turn them into ashes. And at this moment, that power was clearly heading straight towards Zhang Yi. Everyone was stunned, including the members of the Tengu squad, including instructor Bai Li Changqing, who had not reacted to this in the slightest and were not at all clear about what was happening on the scene. Everything was going too fast. Only Zhang Yi clearly saw everything. Just as he told Wuluan Ping to come over and be judged by Yang Xinxin's Cupid's arrow, he quickly crouched down his body, a terrifying and incomparable supernatural energy erupted around him, and then his entire body directly rushed towards Zhang Yi. Swish! A dazzling golden light pierced through the sky. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin stood quietly in place, and the 3,000-dimensional gates were centered on him, cascading to protect the two of them. The surging energy was like a mud cow entering the sea after it had disappeared into the dimensional gates. Zhang Yi's gaze looked into the distance as Wuluan Ping stopped a few kilometers away with a playful gaze, staring at him dead on. Zhang Yi rubbed his fingers and his eyes became serious. Black Chariot-level mutant. Just now, with just a single strike, the other party had revealed his strength, and he had to be a Black Chariot-level existence with an ability index of 20,000 plus at the very least. Although Zhang Yi had sensed that something was wrong with the other party, he had never imagined that such an expert was lurking in Tianhai City. Even if we look at the entire Huashu Kingdom, Black Chariot-level mutants are a handful of existences. "You fellow, where on earth did you come out from?" And as a Black Chariot-level mutant, he was the most honorable top combatant wherever he was. And why would he be hiding in Tianhai City for almost a whole year with an ordinary mutant? Zhang Yi's mind was completely unable to understand this point, but at this moment, he clearly knew that the visitor was not good. Since he was not clear about the other party's purpose, he would take him down and then slowly torture him. "Mu Yin!" Zhang Yi gave a low shout. The shadows behind him immediately stood up like fabric, wrapping Yang Xinxin and the others directly into them. As for Zhang Yi himself, he was the first to assume a combat stance. The combat suit unfolded as he took a step out and came directly in front of Wuluan Ping. As for Bai Li Changqing and the others within shadow space at this moment, they were in a state of utter confusion. They did not expect that Wuluan Ping, who had spent so much time with them and looked plain and unimpressive, would possess such a terrifying power. Zhang Yi and Wuluan Ping maintained a distance of several hundred meters between them, with everything under heaven unfolding with him at the center, and everything follows the trail also locked onto Wuluan Ping to death. Once he made any movement, it would be captured by Zhang Yi in advance. "What are you?" Zhang Yi did not rush to strike, but threw out questions while carefully observing Wuluan Ping. Dry and thin, 1.85 meters tall, with messy and long hair, this cultivator would be immediately forgotten when thrown into the street. After Wuluan Ping heard Zhang Yi's words, the corner of his mouth hooked up into a bizarre arc. He suddenly clapped his hands and said to Zhang Yi in an approving tone, "Not bad, you're very good." Zhang Yi frowned slightly. "Oh, which aspect are you referring to?" Wuluan Ping said, "The fact that you were able to discover my existence proves that you are very good." Saying this, he suddenly paused. "Much better than those other guys." Zhang Yi's frown deepened. The other guys, who were they referring to? This sentence contained too much information. Zhang Yi asked, "Are you from the Xinjiang region? Is it because they are not completely dead to me and want to teach me a good lesson?" The smirk on Wuluan Ping's face intensified. He spread his hands and shook his head. No, you thought wrong. I come from a place you can't imagine. However, none of that matters." He shrugged his shoulders. "Since I've already revealed my identity, there's no need to keep you." His attitude was light-hearted, as if he did not place Zhang Yi in his eyes at all. Zhang Yi sneered, "You want to kill me? Or else?" Wuluan Ping cocked his head at Zhang Yi. "A small character like you, if I wanted to kill you, you would have died a year ago." Zhang Yi suddenly felt a chill at his back. Surprisingly, he hadn't realized that he was surrounded by a monster with such a strong strength. In this year, but if the other party had even a hint of killing intent towards him, he might have died in his sleep. However, if the other party had stayed in Tianhai City throughout this year, then it was impossible for him to be aware of Zhang Yi's current strength. Zhang Yi took a deep breath, and the silver-gray circle on his right wrist slowly cracked open, flowing down like mercury, forming a long, sharp sword in the tree in his palm. "It looks like you're not going to give an account of where you came from. Then it's fine, I'll find the answer myself." The mocking look on Wuluan Ping's face intensified. He straightened his right arm, and a golden light emerged within his right hand, finally transforming into a 2-meter-long battle spear. Light flashed amongst Zhang Yi's left eye, anticipating the trajectory of his opponent's strike attack. Wuluan Ping raised his spear and threw it directly at Zhang Yi. The action was as easy as throwing a small stone. However, after the spear was thrown out of his hand, it directly set off a terrifying storm. In the sky above Tianhai City, the sound was like a thunderous tremor. The spear instantly traversed the hundreds of meters of space between the two of them, and everything along the way was destroyed. The earth was deeply cracked. No, to be exact, the earth and rocks were all obliterated. Zhang Yi opened his left hand and unhurriedly used his dimensional gate to parry this attack. The terrifying golden battle spear instantly disappeared into the dimensional gate, and right in the middle of Wuluan Ping's confident gaze, it quickly disappeared without a trace. Not even a single drop of water splashed up. The smile on Wuluan Ping's face slowly disappeared, and that confidence turned into doubt and surprise. How could this happen? With your strength, you shouldn't be able to block my golden battle spear. Zhang Yi's 2 fingers were brought together in one place and aimed at Wuluan Ping. Next, this move of mine, can you block it? Chapter 1579 Mysterious Strong Enemy. Wuluan Ping looked at Zhang Yi with some surprise. His body instantly tensed up and made preparations for defense. Golden-colored supernatural energy surged around his body, making him look like a Buddha statue made of gold. However, in the next moment, he felt an incomparably powerful force coming from the periphery of his entire body, like a huge fist gripping him into a ball of death. Ka-ching! The sound of bones being forcibly misaligned came from him. Even though he possessed a golden light to protect his body, Wuluan Ping's body was still twisted into a bizarre shape. He coughed loudly, unexpectedly spitting out a mouthful of blood from his throat. How could this happen? Your strength shouldn't be this strong. Wuluan Ping's mouth let out an angry roar. He couldn't believe that in just 1 year's time, a person's strength could increase so quickly. He had to know that when he first came to Tianhai City, Zhang Yi was just a slightly stronger bug in his eyes. But now, he was actually crushed by a bug. Perhaps now, Zhang Yi should reintroduce himself. After absorbing a portion of the origin of the evil demon child and divine nest sun god, coupled with his comprehension of the Heart Sutra, it accelerated the rate of absorption of his origin and boosted his strength. Nowadays, Zhang Yi's supernatural ability index had come to a height of 25,000 points. At this moment, if he met Prince Nash again, even if he could not defeat him, he definitely possessed the ability to save his life. It was because he was chaos of absolute defense. Even in the realm of the Black Chariot level, he was an extremely powerful existence. After realizing that the situation was not right, Wuluan Ping's body transformed into a golden light at the first time, and then ran towards the distance. And his target was Zhang Yi's base camp, his shelter. What a fast speed! Zhang Yi couldn't even help but sigh with emotion. However, no matter how fast it is, it can't exceed instantaneous movement. Swish! Zhang Yi directly opened the dimensional gate, and the next time he appeared was right above Wuluan Ping. In his hand, the sword in the tree condensed the power of the void, and a huge black hole surfaced behind him. The unstable power of the void surged out like a demon, wrapping around the top of the arm of his right hand, and crawling up the hilt of the sword in the tree. Zhang Yi slashed his sword down hard at Wuluan Ping. A huge black sharp blade cut through space and instantly arrived behind Wuluan Ping. Void Slash. In Wuluan Ping's right hand, the golden supernatural energy changed once again, coalescing into a huge holy shield that blocked in front of his body. His ability, which seemed to be a release department supernatural ability, could be used to coalesce into a variety of different weapons. Dang! The huge void battle blades slashed on top of the golden holy shield. Wuluan Ping's feet were firmly planted on the ground, but he was also impacted by this terrifying force and flew backward for thousands of meters, and the earth underneath his feet rumbled. The earth under his feet completely shattered. Oh! Surprisingly able to block my attack. Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow. The other party's strength seemed to be a bit stronger than what he had imagined. It seemed that wanting to capture the other party alive by his own ability was not a simple matter. After all, compared to his defensive capabilities, he was not particularly good at offense. Wuluan Ping used the momentum to distance himself from Zhang Yi. He stared at Zhang Yi with a deadly stare, and the look of contempt on his face had disappeared. A space ability user, just like in the past, can perform instantaneous transfer. And nowadays, the distance he can instantly move can already reach 4 kilometers. The strike that was just unleashed on me didn't have any attack trajectory, and it seemed to be an area-wide indiscriminate attack. The attack range of this kind of attack is definitely limited, and it's impossible to unleash it without limits. That's why I need to maintain a sufficient distance from him. Wuluan Ping analyzed the characteristics of Zhang Yi's ability in the first time. His left hand opened up, and his golden supernatural energy quickly condensed into a huge longbow. His right hand clenched in the air, and a golden arrow appeared in his hand. Sacred Dao Bao. Wuluan Ping quickly drew the longbow full and placed the golden arrow in his hand on top of the bowstring. The golden supernatural energy surged like a storm, and the powerful abilities converged on the bowstring, thick as substance, making it impossible to distinguish whether it was a weapon made of supernatural energy or a real bow and arrow. The arrow aimed at Zhang Yi and instantly attacked without hesitation. Among Zhang Yi's left eye, the arrow's trajectory emerged, clearly an arrow that shot straight at him, but the trajectory suddenly appeared in thousands of different ways, chaotic and incomparable. Every time Zhang Yi predicted its trajectory, it would re-evolve into a completely new trajectory. Time Department's ability? Or the rules category? Time did not allow Zhang Yi to think about it. The golden arrow had already cut through a golden channel in midair, heading straight for his chest. Zhang Yi then stopped moving, and instead, he brightly unfolded the 3,000 doors of dimensional gates, defending all the directions around him to the death. The golden arrow instantly arrived at the entrance of the dimensional gate, but it unexpectedly bypassed the dimensional gate directly as if it had self-awareness. Swish swish swish. The golden arrow circled around the huge circular boundary formed by the dimensional gate, and began to fly at a super high speed of more than 10 times Mach speed. Surprisingly, a golden sphere was formed outside the dimensional gate. There was only one golden arrow that gave the effect of forming a sphere of light due to its excessive speed. So it's a tracking arrow. Zhang Yi saw through the nature of the arrow in an instant, and it wasn't as if he hadn't faced this kind of ability before. The law of cause and effect weapon was one of the trickiest abilities. Its existence caused Zhang Yi's space shuffle ability to be unable to unfold. This was because the instantaneous movement of space shuffle was essentially traveling from one door to another. For a brief moment, he would have a moment to appear in the middle of the real world. And this brief moment would risk being attacked by the golden arrows. Zhang Yi did not panic and said to the intelligence system, "Lock that golden arrow and judge its trajectory." The intelligence system, however, quickly gave a reply. "That supernatural arrow is doing an irregular high-speed movement, it is impossible to judge its trajectory." Fine. Zhang Yi was helpless, and there was no way to ask the intelligence system to do too much. Machines were just machines after all. If it could even crack the Black Chariot's ability, it would be too demonic. Looks like I still have to rely on myself. Among Zhang Yi's left eye, light twisted up like a vortex. With him as the center, the flow of time slowed down within a radius of 3,000 meters. Time system ability Time Swamp. The flight speed of the golden arrow was slowed down by 30% all of a sudden, and together with the predictive ability of everything follows the trail, this allowed Zhang Yi to capture its trajectory. Then, Zhang Yi unleashed the power of Divine Realm Netherworld Cleansing, Ka-ching. A sound snapped the golden arrow directly. Chapter 1580 Heavenly Dimensional Weapon. Seeing his golden arrow crushed by Zhang Yi, golden streams of light fell from the sky. Ruan Ping's face, however, revealed a maniacal smile. "You have to go through so much trouble for one arrow, so what about a few more?" His right hand clenched in the air, and surprisingly, 5 huge golden arrows appeared at the same time, and with his longbow drawn to full strength, he flew directly at Zhang Yi. "What a trouble! This is my territory, I don't want to make it too bad." Zhang Yi joined his fingers like swords and aimed at Ruan Ping. "I was just waiting for the skill CD, what are you waiting for?" In the spare time of waiting, the power of the void had already condensed. 5 golden arrows came straight at Zhang Yi, while at Zhang Yi's fingertip, an extremely dark sphere the size of a marble, surging with unstable energy, instantly exploded out. In one strike, it was a black line that ran through the space between the two of them. The golden arrow and the star-piercing cannon directly collided, the terrifying energy clashed, and the dazzling light cut the heaven and earth into 2 different areas. A piece of golden light was dazzling, and a piece of extreme darkness was like falling into the middle of the night. Buzz the shockwave took its center and spread out in all directions, sweeping past Ruan Ping and Zhang Yi's everything under heaven and sweeping towards Tianhai City. An area of more than 10 kilometers in a radius was completely destroyed, and all traces of human activity completely disappeared. Luckily, this was a no-man's land where no one survived, otherwise no one would have survived after that just passed. Ruan Ping realized that his moves did not cause much lethality to Zhang Yi, and at this point, he already understood in his heart that it would be exceptionally difficult for him to even defeat Zhang Yi. Not to mention killing Zhang Yi. Therefore, he took a deep breath and gathered the supernatural energy in his body into his right hand. The golden-colored supernatural energy surged like the waves of the sea, and surprisingly, the whistling sound of golden waves appeared behind him. From amongst the golden ocean of supernatural energy, he drew out 13 arrows and shot 13 arrows in a row at a speed so fast that it was indiscernible to the naked eye, heading straight for Zhang Yi. 13 golden arrows, one right after the other. The one shot of stored energy behind would always be 1 point stronger than the one in front. Bang! 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 Each arrow would instantly shatter after hitting the one in front of it, turning into golden rain in the sky, and this power would be transferred to the body of the arrow in front of it. In this manner, the 13 arrows gathered all of their power in one place, forming one of the strongest arrows that shot towards Zhang Yi's dimensional gate. Zhang Yi's eyes could not help but become serious. This strike contained an extremely terrifying power, even he had to deal with it seriously. Protect! The dimensional gate blocked in front of him. The golden arrows shot in, instantly penetrating through 7 dimensional gates before they then disappeared into the midst of the 8th dimensional gate. A black chariot-level mutant, unleashing his entire body to make the strongest strike, was only able to make it this far. However, Ruan Ping did not hold anything back after the strike, instead choosing to transform into a golden light and head straight for Zhang Yi's shelter. From the beginning to the end, his purpose was very clear, to defeat Zhang Yi by any means necessary. Since it was on Zhang Yi's home turf, he definitely had to wreak havoc. It would be best to kill all the people Zhang Yi cared about the most, so that Zhang Yi's psyche would break down before he could strike. However, Zhang Yi did not show too much worry when he saw where Ruan Ping was going. Because right in front of Ruan Ping, the asylum's spherical structure that looked like the top of a European-style castle suddenly unfolded. A huge blackened gun muzzle had already extended out, aiming in the direction where Ruan Ping was. Lu Karen was sitting inside the control room, staring intently at the golden light that was speeding towards the center of the screen. After Zhang Yi's delay, she had already measured the opponent's trajectory. At this moment, Ruan Ping launched his strongest strike just when the supernatural power was vacant. She stared at the screen and without hesitation, directly pressed the launch button. The black barrel instantly appeared red, and even Lu Karen's specially built heavenly dimension weapon overheated as it withstood the overpowering force. There was no earth-shattering roar, just a red ray that was 50 centimeters thick, penetrating between heaven and earth, shooting towards Ruan Ping. Ruan Ping's attention was focused on defending against Zhang Yi's pursuit, and he did not expect that those weak ordinary humans would still be able to inflict damage on him. It wasn't until the red ray instantly came in front of his eyes and the terrifying power wrapped around his body that a look of horror first appeared in his eyes. Boom! In front of the life and death crisis, he erupted all the strength of his entire body, his arms interlocked across his body. Dazzling golden supernatural energy surged out like a storm, and from afar he looked like a golden sun. As the two energies collided together, the power of the heavenly dimension weapon erupted, even surpassing Zhang Yi's star-piercing cannon. At this moment, after Ruan Ping, who was empty of supernatural energy, withstood this strike, he was directly blown away by the enormous energy. His body unexpectedly traversed dozens of kilometers and was directly blasted into the coastal waters of Tianhai City. Zhang Yi didn't hesitate to chase after him and said to Lu Karen, "Start storing up energy and prepare for the second attack. When the time is right, launch it directly." Here, this was Tianhai City. His Zhang Yi's territory. The advantage of the location was an extremely huge boost to a mutant's battle power. It was just like the evil demon in Edo Castle and the sprites in the Ice Blossom Swamp. Then Zhang Yi would only become more powerful in Tianhai City. Back more than a year ago, against the Sky Dragon King, he had demonstrated the Tianhai City cannon. And the upgrades on the weapon level never stopped. Weapons that were too large would not be convenient to take out in the middle of a battle due to the long time it took to store energy, so Zhang Yi would not carry them around. But putting it in Tianhai City as one of the underpinnings was not a problem at all. Mutants were constantly evolving, and so were the weapons in this world. After obtaining a material like Yuan, it marked the beginning of a whole new era for thermal weapons. Lu Karen, as a world-class mechanic, naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. Lu Karen was full of excitement at this moment. As a mutant who had left the mechanical realm and had almost negligible combat power, she had just heavily injured a black chariot-level mutant with a heavenly dimension weapon she had built with her own hands. This great sense of accomplishment made her body tremble with excitement. "Yes, brother." Lu Karen took a deep breath and immediately began to build up her energy, ready to launch a second attack. That was why the barrel of this weapon only had a 30-second lifespan, and each shot consumed a whopping 2 tons of yuan stone material. But seeing its power, one would understand that it was all worth it.